You're listening to the Deloach Approach here on WNLMradio.com. For some reason, I can't say that tonight. We are really glad to have our next guest with us. We tried this last week, and we got started, and then Murphy's Law showed up, and Charles and I got thrown off. Our guest tonight is Charles Key. Charles is a former state representative in the state of Oklahoma. In fact, he served in the Oklahoma legislature for 18 years, over two different periods of time, or I guess over three different periods of time. At any rate, Charles is a good friend of mine in the way of full disclosure. I've known Charles for about 20 years. He's been down to Guyana. He and his family, his entire family, have been down and worked with us here. So we're really glad to have him here with us tonight. Charles, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be back again. Of course, I've been working with you at other times.
Before we get started, I want to remind everyone we have a new call-in number tonight. It's a temporary number just for tonight. It's 707-701-3325. Write that down, folks. You're going to have questions for Charles. 707-701-3325.
That's right. Now, we asked Charles to come back this time. We've talked about several different things, but I found out recently when he was here on the show that he had written a book about the Oklahoma City bombing. Now, the Oklahoma City bombing occurred April 19th, 1995. And frankly, there are some people that have said, well, is that even relevant today? It certainly is, because it's going to show you what happens when our government doesn't do their job, when they become the government to the people rather than the government by, for, and of the people. And so we're going to talk about that some, but I want to kind of bring you up to speed as to what happened on that day, and then we'll start asking Charles some questions. April 19th, 1995, 2 years exactly after the Waco fiasco in Waco, Texas, and that date was important. At least by the perpetrator. Timothy McVeigh was identified as basically the lone bomber by our government. That was the official story. And that bomb went off at 9:02 a.m. The truck that he was driving was parked in front of the Alfred P. Murrow building, which was a federal building there. The FBI, the DEA, the ATF, HUD, the Secret Service, the U.S. Marshal Service, Social Security, Army and Marine recruiting offices, the Federal Credit Union, the Federal Employees Union, and others all had offices there. This bomb went off at 9:02 a.m. and killed 168 people, including 19 children who were staying in a child care facility there in the building. There were over 800 people that were injured, and at least one rescue worker was killed within the first hour or so of the bombing. This happened 6 years before 9/11. The official story that came out by the government was almost immediately that two Middle Eastern suspects with blue jogging suits were seen. Timothy McVeigh was captured a little over an hour later. Not captured, he was arrested 60 miles north of Oklahoma City. The feds arrested him 2 days later. The truck was rented in Kansas. They used James Nichols' address in Kansas, which was Terry Nichols' brother, or is Terry Nichols' brother. Within 24 hours, McVeigh was fingered as a suspect. Now, that's basically the official story as the government lays out what happened. Charles, you were in Oklahoma City and not far away from the Murrah building when this occurred. Why don't you tell us what happened that day from your perspective?
Well, I got up that day just as I always do, ready to go to the state capitol building for that days of legislative activity. Our legislative session last just under 6 months, real similar to a lot of the states. Their legislature will go into session sometime right at or just after the first of the year and last for roughly 6 months, and that's where Oklahoma is. And I was at my business office with a partner. I'm in the insurance business, and so I had another agent that I was kind of a partner of mine, and my secretary at the time in that business office, and we were sitting around drinking coffee from about 8:15 till about the time the bombing occurred. And I never forget that day, like most people won't forget a day like that, and especially Oklahomans and people that live right in Oklahoma City. You remember, what you were doing at that time. And we were talking, and all of a sudden there was this two rumbling, booming kind of sounds, and it actually sounded like what a lot of people might see as and remember as familiar when you hear something on top of a building that is, if you had people working on it, whether they were putting the roof on or whatever, it sounded like the air conditioning and heating equipment on top of a building was being moved around or changed out or something. And as a matter of fact, that office building was supposed to have new heat and air units put on it. And so we made comment to each other, maybe they're making that change. They're doing that change out today. And it was a boom, boom kind of a sound. And it sounded like it was directly on top of that building. And it was
Wait. You heard two booms?
Two booms, yeah. It was like a boom, boom.
Okay.
And, just a few seconds, meaning probably about 3 seconds apart, 2.5, 3, 4 seconds apart. And we made comment to each other, hey, I guess they're changing out the heat and air system this morning. And just not too many literal minutes, just a few minutes after that, probably 4 minutes, 5 minutes after that, my secretary at the Capitol called me. She said, have you looked downtown or have you heard anything about what's going on? And I said, no. She said, well, there's some kind of explosion downtown. You need to get down here right away. I asked her what it was. She goes, I don't know, but people think there's, something's happened downtown. She said, you got to go outside and look and see all the smoke coming up. And we did that, and we saw the smoke, and I rushed downtown, made the connection on the interstate that crosses through Oklahoma City. Interstate 40, could see all the smoke coming up from there. And as I got to the Capitol and was walking up the east steps, I happened to be walking up with one other gentleman who was a longtime firefighters organization lobbyist, a real respected man named Pete Stavros. And we were having this conversation as we were going up the steps and going into the building. And I'll never forget the very worried look on his face. And we were having this exchange about what we thought it was. And he said, well, I think it must be a gas line. And I said, well, I hope you're right, Pete, because I just got a bad feeling it's something worse than that. And that was about all our conversation was. I went into the building. The session was starting just immediately, and we had a quick session. We were kind of informed of what was going on, and we were primarily informed by another state representative who happened to be in that downtown area, just about a block or so east of the Murrah building, and he was going to take his son to a daycare center, which he typically did in the mornings, and the pressure and explosion from the bombing made him almost totally lose control of his car, and it effectively blew his windshield out. And he got up before us and told us what he saw, what he experienced. He was breathing real deeply, very traumatized by it, and he looked like a man that had been in seen a terrible, terrible crime or accident, or been in a war zone or something like that. The way he was reacting and the look on his face and the things that he was describing, and it was very, made a big imprint on everybody. And we immediately closed down the Capitol, and they searched it, et cetera, and then the rest, we all watched it on our TV sets, and many people went down and tried to help. And so that was the first hour or so of my day. And then, like everyone, we saw what took place on the TV screen. As a matter of fact, the earliest video of the Murrah building, there happened to be a NBC affiliate, Channel 4 in Oklahoma City, KFOR TV, there was a crew close, and the bombing happened, and they immediately set up their camera looking straight, basically almost straight south towards the north face of the building that was blown away. And it was just a live shot without any commentary, and it showed the building sitting there smoking, and there was actually two men that walked in front of that building. And frankly, I've forgotten just how many minutes after the bombing that they set that up. But it was way before there was any organized news activity or rescue effort. Matter of fact, those two men are subject to questions about who they were and what they were doing there.
Is that right?
And so that's another piece of the puzzle. But that was how my day started.
Mm.
Well, now, you started a group a little later known as the Oklahoma City Bombing Investigative Committee. How much later did you start that group?
Well, it was really probably, it was several months later, about 3 months later, that it formally started taking shape. And it wasn't really, I shouldn't say formally, it wasn't formally started until 6 months or so later.
Well, why did you make the decision? Why did you come to the conclusion, or how did you come to the conclusion that you had to take this project on?
Well, where we left off here, I was watching it just like everyone else was I was watching the news coverage. It was, just 24/7. And as everybody knows that we're paying any attention and can remember back then, and the first minutes and hours in that first day, all of the reporting about what happened there, about the alleged truck bomb that did the damage out front, it originally was reported as a car bomb. It's very specific amount, size, and car, and it continued to grow. There also was the bomb squad that showed up and took other bombs out of the building.
Right.
There was the news coverage of who the perpetrators are. You mentioned it in the intro of this program that originally there were Middle Eastern suspects that they were looking for, and it was very specific as to the vehicle they were driving, people that saw them, et cetera, et cetera. As a matter of fact, the very early reporting of those suspects were by a group of 3 or 4 joggers that would jog every morning that were business people or government officials downtown. There was one of them was an elected official, a female, that would jog with 2 or 3 other people in the mornings. And I knew most of those people. They saw those Middle Eastern suspects and gave their reports to the FBI and the local law enforcement. And, all these things that we saw develop raised questions, and for many people, not just myself, many, many people, and were not satisfied with how the investigation was going forward. In addition to myself, some of those people that have had questions not only then, very early, but still to this day, were people that lost loved ones in the building.
Yeah.
Sure.
People that had kids in the daycare center, or they had spouses or family members that were in the building that died or were seriously hurt. And, people like that. So that's where my interest started.
In fact, wasn't Alex Jones one of those early reporters? And now, of course, he's considered kind of a tinfoil hatter. But didn't he start out as one of the early Oklahoma City investigators, reporters?
Yeah, he was really on this thing early on, and like all of the media was, and so he was one of the early reporters, and I ended up being on his program. I don't even know how many times over the first months and years as time went by.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now the official government story started to change right away, didn't it?
Yeah, the focus was on, and I learned this from experts that I worked with, people that were seasoned investigators and law enforcement, people that had worked for the FBI for their whole career, people that were police officers their whole career, people that were in the media their whole career, that also had serious questions, and that myself and others, we used as part of our team and our group so that we could do